Welcome to The Explainer. I'm your host, and my awesome co-host and I are tackling something today that sounds super intimidating, but is actually incredibly fascinating.
Absolutely. Today, we're diving deep into the features of national income. It sounds, a bit heavy and academic, but stick with us. By the end of this explainer, you'll literally see how the financial gears of an entire country actually turn. Let's get right into it.
So, let me just pose a quick question. If someone asked you, right now, exactly how wealthy you are, what's your first move? You'd probably whip out your phone, tap on your banking app, maybe glance at your savings or investments, right? Pretty straightforward.
Right, exactly. But how on earth do you measure the wealth of a whole entire nation? You definitely can't just log into one single national bank app and see a nice clean balance. Since 1949, when India set up the National Income Committee, economists have been grappling with this totally massive challenge. We're talking about untangling a giant web of interconnected transactions.
And honestly, it's just staggering to think about the sheer scale of what we're actually looking at here.
Oh, for sure. It really captures the whole shebang, doesn't it? National income literally encapsulates the entirety of a nation's diverse activities. I mean, we're talking about everything. Farmers harvesting crops, bustling manufacturing plants, the chaotic trading floor of the stock market, right down to the shipping containers, trains, and planes. Every single bit of production, distribution, exchange, and consumption across the entire country has to somehow be accounted for.
Because it encompasses all of that, the absolute first foundational feature we have to lock in is that national income is strictly a macroeconomic concept. We aren't just zooming in on a single household or analyzing one local mom-and-pop shop.
Right. Think of it like this. Microeconomics, that's looking really closely at one individual's wallet. Macroeconomics, on the other hand, is zooming way, way out to look at the entire country's financial aggregate. We're looking at the income of the economy as a whole giant system.
Now, when we're actually trying to add up all that nationwide activity, we have to be ridiculously careful. There is a golden rule here: only final goods count.
Yes, absolutely crucial. If you don't follow this rule to the letter, you fall right into the trap of double counting or multiple counting. And what that does is it artificially inflates a country's wealth, making it look richer than it actually is. So we only care about the value of final goods and services, meaning the stuff that is completely ready for final consumption.
Okay, let's actually see how this works with a tasty, everyday analogy. Imagine a bakery.
Right, okay. So, step 1, a farmer grows and sells some wheat, and a refinery processes some sugar. Those are what we call intermediate goods.
Then, step 2, a miller comes along and grinds that wheat down into flour. That is also an intermediate good. Finally, step 3, the baker takes that flour and sugar and bakes this delicious final loaf of bread.
So when economists are estimating national income, they completely cross out all those intermediate transactions. They totally ignore the standalone wheat, the sugar, the flour. Why? Because the value of all those raw ingredients is already baked right into the final price of that loaf of bread. If we added the wheat, plus the flour, plus the final bread, we'd literally be counting the exact same economic value 3 separate times. No way we can do that.
Makes total sense. So we only count final goods. But wait, here is the next huge hurdle. Think about this random assortment: 10 apples, 5 cars, and 2 haircuts.
Right. If an economist actually tried to tally up every physical thing the country produced, the national ledger would just be pure chaos.
You absolutely cannot add fruit, heavy vehicles, and personal grooming services together. Like, what do you even get when you add an apple to a car? You just get a total mess. You can't calculate national income without some sort of common metric.
Which brings us to how we resolve that absurdity. The crucial feature here is money value. Modern economies are, at their core, money economies.
Exactly. Every single thing produced has to be converted to a monetary value. Those apples, those cars, the haircuts, they are all expressed strictly in terms of money. It acts as the one common currency yardstick that actually allows us to add all these wildly different goods and services together to find the total income of the nation.
Okay, but even once we have that massive total money value, we aren't quite done yet. We still need to calculate the net aggregate value.
Right. Pay close attention to that word, net. We don't just grab the gross total and call it a day. We actually have to subtract a very real, kind of hidden cost, which is depreciation. Think about the heavy machinery used to harvest that wheat, or the robotic arms building those cars on the assembly line. They all experience wear and tear over time, right? They lose value. So to get the true, most accurate measure of national income, we absolutely must deduct that depreciation cost.
All right, let's pivot for a second and widen our scope even further. Because obviously, our economy doesn't just exist in a vacuum, completely isolated from the rest of the planet. Let's look at the global trade angle.
Oh, this is a huge one. A really distinct feature of national income is that it has to include net income from abroad. We have to somehow account for the massive, massive amount of international trade and foreign investment that is constantly moving across our borders every single day.
So, the global formulas we use to calculate this, I know, they kind of look like algebra at first glance, but they are actually super intuitive. First up, we take the value of all our exports and simply subtract the value of our imports. That is X minus M. Simple enough. Next, we look at investments in capital. We take the receipts we get from foreign investments and subtract the payments we make abroad. That gives us R minus P. When we take these net earnings and add them to our domestic aggregate, boom, we get a complete, truly global picture of the nation's wealth.
Now, here is a really common trap people fall into. They tend to think that national income is like a static photograph, right? Like it's just a snapshot of the country's bank account on one single random day. Actually, scratch that, it's nothing like a snapshot. In reality, national income is fundamentally a flow concept. It is a continuous, highly dynamic stream. Remember, human wants are never-ending, which means production has to be a continuous activity. Money and goods are constantly, endlessly flowing in a circular manner between households and business firms.
And precisely because it's this continuous flow of wealth, economists need a defined way to actually measure it. You can't just measure a river without picking your spots. It is always expressed with reference to a very specific time period.
Exactly. You need a start and an end point to measure that stream. In India, for example, the timeline used to measure this continuous flow of goods and services is the financial year, and that runs from the 1st of April all the way to the 31st of March. Having that specific 12-month window is what allows economists to actually sit down and compile all this data accurately.
Okay, so let's recap real quick. We've zoomed out to the macro perspective, checked out final goods, established the money value, factored in global trade, and measured the financial flow. We have basically mapped out exactly how national income is fundamentally structured. We have! But before we wrap up this explainer, we want to leave you with a highly provocative question to chew on. What is the true wealth of your nation? Beyond just the numbers on a spreadsheet. It's such an important question, because as our source material notes when discussing the concept of green GNP, a mere monetary increase in national income doesn't always automatically reflect an actual improvement in our true quality of life. Think about it. If those financial numbers are shooting up simply because we are rapidly depleting natural resources or causing massive environmental pollution, is the nation actually getting wealthier? It's a genuinely fascinating debate, isn't it? It reminds us that while measuring the financial aggregate is absolutely essential, real economic welfare is about so much more than just a single number. Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and we'll catch you next time.